Welcome to the Festive Tech Calendar 2020. My name is Ed Baker and I'm going to talk to you today about how to protect yourself with Azure Sentinel. First of all, thank you very much indeed to Gregor and Richard for setting this up again this year, and we look forward to many more years of festive learning. Protect yourself with Azure Sentinel. All of the assets and links from this presentation will be available at the GitHub repository edbakermct/sentinel. Almost all organisations today are faced with a really difficult task of trying to protect their new expanded digital estate from vastly increasing cyber threats and attacks. The inevitable move to the cloud and the fact we now have a mobile workforce forced upon us have pushed this border of protection of your estate beyond the boundary of your physical network, beyond your on-premises environment. Data and users and systems are located absolutely everywhere. The frequency and sophistication of attacks are growing day by day. So it doesn't matter the size of your organization, you are a target. The challenge that everybody in the IT industry is struggling with is how to meet this threat whilst still providing a productive environment for remote and distributed working. The significant challenges that are faced are handled by these security operation teams who are always tasked with defending your estate. As the estate grows, so does the volume of the security data you have to protect. Most organisations report an increase. Much of it's coming from the cloud. The volume is just going to keep growing. And data is the fuel for all the machine learning models that have become so critical to detecting threats. The models need both more signals and more diverse signals to be able to ascertain what type of attack and where it's coming from. Most enterprises have been deploying new, improved security products. The difficulty with that means you're deploying multiple products. Multiple products don't always integrate, don't always work together, don't always have the same people managing them, and the number of skills required to manage them is greater. So in isolation, all of these products might have very high false positive rates and also poor response prioritization. So you get lots and lots of alert noise. Because of this, organizations are reporting that almost half, so 44% in these stats, aren't investigated because they don't pick them out from the noise of all the other alerts. Using the cloud can help manage this complexity. It simplifies things, it makes security easy to manage, using the power of machine learning and artificial intelligence provided by, in this instance, Microsoft's Azure artificial intelligence and machine learning tools, gives your security operations team the ability to concentrate on their work and not analysing things that do not need analysing. Azure Sentinel provides all of the benefits of the cloud, and it's Microsoft's new intelligent cloud-native security investigation and event management solution. It allows you to collect, store and analyze all of your data regardless of volume. It scales. The log analytics workspace on which it is based scales automatically to support all of the data you are collecting. And you only pay for what you use. There's no infrastructure, there's no maintenance, there's no management of it. You just pay for what you use. It also uses Microsoft's leading artificial intelligence and automation tools for your investigation and remediation of events, alerts and incidents. So it will help to detect threats you may well have missed, turns those alerts into actionable incidents to release and reduce you from fatigue from overloading alert noise, and then applies automation through playbooks or logic apps to reduce the number of manual processes on regular alerts. It's also an end-to-end solution. You don't have to use anything else. It goes from collection and visibility of all your information, giving you instant insight into the data using workbooks and queries. You can then apply your analytics and find the threats from all those alerts and all that data. And you can hunt through all your data using hundreds of built-in queries and generate your own queries and bookmarks on those queries to access the real threats. We then have the investigation solution that gives you a graphical investigation tool and timeline views and entity mapping, and the automation of both investigation and remediation using playbooks. Sitting behind all of this is Microsoft's billion-dollar annual investment in their cybersecurity, mapped to a network of thousands of global security experts, analysing trillions of signals every day. I'm going to give you 11 steps to help you protect yourself using Sentinel. And the very first one is going to be collection. We need to collect our data. It gives an end-to-end, Azure Sentinel gives this end-to-end solution for collecting data. So we get instant insight into that data. You can collect data from on-premises environments. You can collect data from your Azure resources, from your Azure services, from other clouds, so AWS, GCP, and in different formats. We're not just talking Windows or Windows events. We can collect our Microsoft 365 events. We can collect our Azure events, from login data to security data. There are other collectors for the common event format, for syslog, and you can see here the breadth of what we can collect. So it ties into all of Microsoft's Defender solutions that used to be Advanced Threat Protection, now the various Defender solutions. Third parties on premises using connectors for Cisco, Checkpoint, Linux, Palo Alto. Direct connections to our Office and Microsoft 365 solutions and Azure Infrastructure as a Service as well. And a typical example might be something like this. So we can connect our branch office that's using Linux, using our syslog, connected direct to a syslog connector in the cloud. Or we can hold our syslog connector locally and tier them, and then have a proxy collector sending them into Sentinel through the Log Analytics workspace. Whichever way you manage your events and your collections, it can be done using Azure Sentinel. And obviously there are the third-party connections into other REST APIs such as Barracuda, Symantec and F5. We then move on to the visualization. So we can use workbooks, as I've mentioned a couple of times now. There's a gallery of many workbooks from different types of solutions. You can create your own workbooks and your own queries to gain an insight through these graphical representations of the logs stored in your Log Analytics workspace, which is connected to Azure Sentinel. Also gives us an interactive dashboard. Here we're looking at the sign-in analysis, which we'll look at in real-world solution in the demonstration a little bit later. You can even use charts on your search results. So you can have tables, charts, or native query results in your workbooks. So having collected and visualized, we then want to look at how to analyze our solutions. Over 100 analytical built-in rules, from informational to low to medium to high severity attacks or alerts. And you can build your own rules using Custo query language as well. From any of these rules that generate alerts, you can then trigger your automated playbooks or logic apps to carry out remediation actions. All of this uses Microsoft's machine learning to help you catch more and more relevant threats. From the alerts that are generated, Azure Sentinel will produce incidents. And an incident can be based on 1 alert, 10 alerts, 1,000 alerts, all linked together. You can create bookmarks based on those incidents and queries. You can assign them to anybody in your Azure Active Directory, internal or external. You can track the status of the alert from new to active to closed. And you can keep a watch on the incident by keeping tags and comments on activities around that incident. And again, you can also trigger your automated logic apps playbooks to remediate. Now, these incidents are automatically created from alerts. You can also create an incident as a security analyst when you're hunting. So if you're running queries and finding things that are happening that haven't been picked up, you can generate an incident from those queries. Once you've picked the incident you want to analyze and want to investigate, you can then graphically investigate and visualize the timeline, the insights, and the entities that are involved in this attack. If you want to see further, you can expand that into previous attacks of a similar nature or by similar entities just by clicking on those links. The investigation also has built-in automated detonation. So if there are any URLs, it will automatically detonate those to speed up your investigation. So if a malicious URL or a potentially malicious URL appears during your investigation, you can explode that and it'll show you what effect that would have. Any mapped URLs get automatically detonated. The graph will be immediately updated with the results. A final URL and screenshot is then kept, which is brilliant for identifying phishing. So you're sent a URL, you think you're going to one location, you end up at another location. You can see the final destination using this automated detonation. To use this, you need to make sure that you have URL logging enabled or threat logging for all of your web gateways and proxies and firewalls. We then move on to hunting, and built-in threat hunting queries built by both Microsoft and these thousands of community experts that have helped Microsoft develop this solution. And you can run them to hunt through your data that's been stored to pick up any potential threats or attacks that haven't been pulled out by your other alerts and connectors. You don't need the ability to write KQL, Custo Query Language, to run these. It helps to be able to run your own, but you don't need it. And you can then, from these hunting queries, immediately create and start investigations as well. So we can explore all the data sets, create graphs, create tables, detect and plot anomalies in all of the data that we've pulled out, which assists you to generate root cause analysis. What caused this? Where did it happen? When did it happen? Who did it? And having found these queries and generated this data, you can then bookmark and you can even live stream your queries to manage this hunt for what's going on in your environment. And if you want to delve even deeper, you can use Jupyter notebooks for advanced hunting, which means you can then use your own choice of languages from Python or KQL or R to pull out the data and ascertain what's happening in your environment. Having analysed, hunted all of this information, we have the ability now to take automated actions using Azure Sentinel playbooks. Playbooks, as I've mentioned, are logic apps. There's a number of samples available for you. They're fully integrated into the Azure Sentinel workspace. They're scalable and they integrate all of your solutions across multiple tools with hundreds of connectors that allow you to take actions, automated actions, on your environment. And you can trigger these playbooks either from an alert directly or from an incident investigation. And as an example, there are the ability to create an alert, send a ticket direct to an individual analyst and raise that for them. You can open tickets, you can post a Teams message to tell somebody they've got to do this, this or this. So it's from incident management to investigation to even remediation, to set a rule that blocks an IP address from communicating into your environment, or blocks a user, quarantine a user out of the system, or even say, now we want to alert and generate a new conditional access rule for this particular user or this particular environment. Let's have a look at a short overview and demonstration of Azure Sentinel. In this short demonstration, I'm going to give you an overview of Azure Sentinel. Azure Sentinel is available in the Azure portal at portal.azure.com. Your first stage is to create a subscription. Once you've done that, you can create yourself a log analytics workspace. This is a repository for all the data that you're going to collect and analyze. Having done that, you can then go to Azure Sentinel and connect it to your log analytics workspace. You can see here from the overview tile that it's analysing currently the last 24 hours only. I can expand this up to a custom range, and in this instance I'm just going to look at the last 30 days, and it will show me all of the events and alerts that have been raised on this workspace over that period. It'll also give me an indicator of whether this is trending upwards or trending downwards. As an example, you can see here there are 876,000 events over 30 days, which is up 56.4 thousand over the previous 30 days, but there are only 466 incidents, which is down from 528. It also lists for me the status of these incidents, how many are new, active, closed, and how many were closed as false positives to assist in the learning. On this tile, we also have a graphical representation of those, so where they've come from, whether they're from security or performance or other types of alerts and events, any incidents that have been recently highlighted, and any anomalies from our data. Should this have any malicious events in this current period, they would be displayed on the map to show me where they may have been created. I can always drill straight down into the log analytics workspace and use the Custo query language to pull back information from the workspace. So in this instance, I've joined the performance database and looked at the time, which is obviously the period I've selected, the 30 days, and it's pulled back all of the events from that period. And it's telling me what I have analysed, or at least collected in this instance. And I can drill down further into that information. So I get very detailed information just having pressed one click from the initial graphical display. One of the major tools available to me in Azure Sentinel is the ability to investigate incidents. So I'm going to look at a suspicious authentication activity here. And it takes me direct to the incident, explains the text of the incident and what's gone on. In this instance, somebody is pushing a dictionary attack to my host, which is in the cloud, which does have a public IP address. In this instance, it's failed, so it's just a suspicious activity that this machine is under attack. It tells me how many events, there aren't any others, how many alerts, there's been one, when it was updated, which host, and I can go direct to that host and look at all the details that I might have of that host. What level of attack it is, well, this is pre-attack because they're trying to get into my system. And I can look at a workbook of the auditing and metrics around this incident. What I'm actually going to do is click on Investigate, and it will now show me a graphical representation, a mapped representation of what's occurred. Now, this is an extremely simple incident. There's been a suspicious authentication activity based on one host. If I click on the suspicious authentication activity, it gives me all of the information, tells me the system alert, allows me to choose what to do and tells me what to do to remediate this attack, where it came from. So this actually came from the Azure Security Center. I've connected this workspace and this Azure Sentinel instance to the Azure Security Center, and that is checking for security on all of the hosts on which I have the agent installed. But if I go to the host itself, we get a bit more information here. If I click on the host, we can see that I have a number of related alerts. In fact, it's still counting those alerts. That it's telling me how many processes I've got running on that individual host and how many parent processes are running. I can even expand it further and look at what other types of information I've got. So which accounts it's logged on to, any user accounts that have been created, anything that would give me more information about this particular attack. Now it tells me I've got 287 related alerts. I can then expand this incident and pull out all the other related alerts. Now they're all suspicious authentication because that's all that's going on with this machine. And if I select on those, it tells me I've got 286 entities related to this attack or potential attack. So this is currently set as a new status. I can say, well, actually, I'm now investigating this, so it's active, and I can apply it as active. I can also assign it to anyone in my Azure Active Directory database, internal or external, it doesn't matter. So we'll assign this to Fred Blogs, and I can also look at the timeline of my attack. So it tells me when it happened, and if this was part of a more intelligent or more complex attack, it would give me a timeline of what's actually happened. There's also a new insights section. I need to select an entity and then go and select my insight. So if I select my entity and select insights, it should now pull any insights it's found about this entity. So anything that's happened, there's been no results on any of those, any rare processes that have been used. So it gives me some detailed intelligence as to what's been going on that device and how to remediate such attacks. So as well as incidents, we have a number of workbooks available. You can create your own workbooks, you can add workbooks to the system, or you can use templated workbooks. So you can see here I've got workbooks for Azure Activity, Insecure Protocols. They're all regularly updated, and there are many more available in these templates for third-party solutions as well. But I'm just going to look at the workbooks I've got saved, and I'm going to have a look at my Azure AD audit logs, and I can then view that workbook. And it will take me into the audit logs. It'll tell me what's been happening, what type of logs have been registered, and what frequency they've been used with, and whether they're trending upwards or downwards. From here, I can drill down directly into those individual operations within that audit log to see what's occurred and who, more importantly, who has carried out these activities and whether they were successful or whether they failed. And I can go down into each individual operation that's been carried out. All of the workbooks are different. They're based on the Custo query language in the background, pulling out the information from the log analytics workspace. Let's have a look at one other. Let's have a look at the Azure AD sign-in logs. And we can see here I've got 5,500 sign-ins. Nearly all of them are successful. I've only got 11 failures. Thankfully, they're all in the UK, which is good. That's somewhere in Wales that my internet endpoint comes out at. Tells me what devices have been used. what applications within those devices, and what type of activity has been carried out. Also tells me when I've used conditional access, whether it was successful, and what controls were used. So some very detailed tracking information using workbooks. We can also go hunting. So here I've got a number of queries, predefined queries, that will allow me to go and start finding out what's been going on and whether I can dig deeper into the information I've stored. So here I've got Azure Active Directory sign-in bursts from multiple locations. That's an obvious evidence of some form of attack. And slightly less obvious are Active Directory sign-ins or Azure Active Directory sign-ins from new locations. And I can run these queries. I can generate my own queries, but I can run these queries and it will tell me what results I've got. And I can then view the results of the queries. So here we've got a rarely used location, and it'll give me all of the information and how often it has happened. And there are, I was going to say hundreds, there's 172 queries in this list. And I can generate my own queries as well. And I can generate bookmarks based on those queries. So here I've got a bookmark from March, summary of failed user logins by reason. The Log Analytics workspace keeps data for the period of time for which you're prepared to pay for that data to be stored. So most of these will have lost the data in the background, so I can no longer investigate this particular bookmark because this was from March and the data from March has left the database. But it will tell you that and explain it to you. You can also use Azure Notebooks, and there's a lot of training and help available with how to use these notebooks to carry out more investigation and more hunting. In the initial setup, we need to connect our Azure Sentinel instance to our sources of data to collect the information. And you can see here there are 60 connectors. I've chosen just 12 connectors. So I've connected to Azure Active Directory, I've connected to Identity Protection, my Azure Activity Log, Advanced Threat Protection, which is now Microsoft Defender for Identity. My Security Center I've connected to, Microsoft DNS as well. I've connected it to my Microsoft Cloud App Security solution. So all of my Microsoft 365 and all of my other cloud apps are being monitored, and that's being passed back and analyzed by Sentinel as well, and also my Office 365 subscription. There are many connectors, both Microsoft and third-party. You can see here the Symantec ones and the Squadra, that allow you to connect all of your data sources directly into Sentinel. So if I was to go in and try and connect Azure Information Protection, I open the connector page. I then have to follow the configuration rules, how to connect to those logs. So as long as my logs are being pushed out to a Log Analytics workspace, which they are, I can then enable the deeper analytics, and it will allow me to connect if there are any Azure Information Protection logs stored in this workspace. It will allow me to connect to them. Sentinel also has analytics built in, and there are a number of rules. In this instance, I've got 16 rules activated. So my Azure Security Center alert rule will generate alerts for me. I can have incidents raised based on Azure, or what's now Microsoft Defender for Identity, the old Azure Advanced Threat Protection. And of course, I can generate new rules as well. I can also take automated action based on alerts and incidents, and I can do that using playbooks, Azure Sentinel playbooks. So you can see here from the icon that Azure Sentinel playbooks are actually logic apps. And if I add a logic playbook, it just takes me to the logic apps and allows me to build my own automation in using logic apps to help me automate remediation actions based on the information that Sentinel provides. Well, I hope you enjoyed the demonstration and the presentation so far. You are probably asking now, well, how do I get started with this? Well, it's very simple. If you don't already have an Azure subscription, you can generate a free trial, go and create yourself a workspace and an Azure Sentinel instance. Then just start connecting it with the apps that you use. If you need more help with Azure Sentinel to get you started, you can obviously go to aka.ms/Azure Sentinel. I hope you found this introduction to how to protect yourself with Azure Sentinel useful, and here's wishing you a super festive period of learning using the festive tech calendar. My name's Ed Baker, and if you want to communicate with me, @edbaker1965 on Twitter is probably the best way. Bye bye.